Good.
It looks like we are, I think we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and LinkedIn. Brent, Baer, thank you for joining me. I know it's been a crazy day for you. My apologies to all the folks that tried to sign in earlier. Unfortunately, Brent had a power outage, and he's doing what the entire out-of-home industry is doing right now, and that is we're making shit happen. So I really appreciate everyone being able to hop in and be able to join us for this live session. So the goal for today's topic is to talk about some of the things that Brent has observed over his tenure in the out-of-home space that could lead to the industry getting in its own way. And this is definitely not a slam session on the big three. This isn't a slam session by any stretch of the imagination. It's really more of a conversation about what we can do as an industry to make all ships rise as we get out of this pandemic. So, I'll kick it off, but before I do that, Brent, you want to give the folks that are tuning in just a quick background on you. I know most of them, or pretty much everybody, knows who you are, but it'd be great to just get a quick background on you and where you come from and where you are today.
Sure, and again, my apologies for causing this to be late. We've had a power outage twice in 3 years, or 4 years, I guess we lived here. This is the first one over 12 hours, so just have not been able to get the internet back on. At Starbucks, which, by the way, is the first time I've been in a public eatery or drinkery since January.
Wow.
Never gone outside the house, so this is a big event here. So anyway, so we're in the Starbucks here. Yeah, as you said, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the good fortune to be on the agency side, on the big six poster scope, worked for Billups for a year, worked for Bunton for a year. I'm sorry, I got to wear this damn mask inside a Starbucks. Worked for Gannett Outdoor, which is now out front, for over 10 years, actually drawing a pension for them.
Wow.
Kind of cool. Worked for Adams for 3.5 years, actually owned 3% of Adams Outdoor. How about that? Wouldn't you like to have 3% of Adams Outdoor right now, James?
I'm focused on owning as much of a percent of Rapify as possible. So that's been my focus. But why don't we get started with the agenda? So, the first, to kick this thing off, what is a common thread that you've observed over the years that you think might lead to friction and the industry kind of getting in its own way? That's really the topic, but I'd love to get your high level feedback on some of the things that you think the industry can maybe improve upon, so that we can all move together as an entire industry.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things. Obviously, I know the popular things that are popular to say right now. I'm well aware of the problem of the day, which is going on. The acknowledging programmatic and data and measurements, and those are certainly important things, but those aren't the things that are holding us back. We've been hearing about out-of-home being difficult to buy for 40 years. I don't know that that's going to change. I don't know that that's any different than any other media. Let's talk about some. You've asked. So the question is, we've had some issues, or the issues. I don't know. When did it begin? I think I kind of want to point my finger at it. Began, James, when finance became more of a controlling interest in the industry than sales. In the past, we were always a sales-driven industry. And you look at the people like Artie Moreno and Carl Eller, and I'm sure there's a lot of people are going to groan like, oh, not Artie Moreno and Carl Eller again. Guys like that who sold. And so they realize the importance of selling. And there's many other things which we'll talk about that are important. That's the thing, I believe, James, that's held us back in the most recent years. I think it was a real key time when one of the big three became owned by a financial group, and I think that caused the industry to take a bit of a nosedive. In the past, you had the big two working, competing against each other, raising each other's boats. I think you and I have talked about this before, causing some competition. And right now, I only see that as really one leader right now, without naming names. And so I just seen a general decline in the industry since we've been more concerned about our stock prices and our bottom lines, and financial people run the organization and not sales-oriented people. So that's the number one. So that's kind of the big view. It's led to a lot of other things like rigidity in how we operate. We're always looking at bottom line, so we're not doing things like, for instance, it was a big leap for people to say we're not gonna hold people to 60-day cancellations anymore. Why don't we have 2-week cancellations or 24-hour cancellations, especially with digital out of home? You can do that. There's a lot of the industry, the big three, they're not embracing social media. On the surface of it, they are, but they're rigid to the extent they don't allow their people to really embrace social media, James, unless it's rubber stamped by them. My God, you trust your people to sell millions of dollars worth of inventory, but not to be on social media. We're not selling day parts. I mean, I've sat in a conference with tons of agency people saying, we want to buy day parts. And to my knowledge, nobody's truly selling day parts where I can buy just a 3 o'clock to a 6 o'clock for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. Are you aware of anybody doing that?
I mean, on the programmatic side, I think that's definitely a thing that is doable today. But I think
it's doable, but it's not being, excuse me, interrupting. The decisions, the rigidity of the industry is that, and this is what's holding us back, James, is we're not allowing it to happen. It's not a question of what's doable. It's
okay. Well,
are we letting it happen?
So let's talk about alignment for a sec. I also want to touch on, a few things that I've observed over my very short stint in out of home. It's only been about 6 years, but I mean, when I came into out of home, from an outsider being, on the other side of the desk, being on the marketing front, one of the things that I had to do is learn a completely new language that was very nascent to the out of home industry. And it's required it's required to transact, unless you're an out of home specialty shop, buying a showing or buying a bunch of faces or buying out of home is really required learning a separate language. And I think that's one barrier. I think the fact that we sell media differently than like a lot of the other channels, I think is a challenge that we should be overcoming. And I think, coronavirus has definitely helped move the industry forward in selling audience more than selling real estate, which I think actually is a good thing. I guess, going back to the alignment piece, what would you change, adapt, or modify to overcome that impedance? Or how would you approach it?
Alignment to mean piece, meaning with regards to getting financial people on board with what do you mean by alignment piece?
Well, you're saying that the different out of home providers aren't aligned. It sounded like you said that they weren't aligned in the way that they sell and promote the channel. Is that not the case, or did I misinterpret that?
Yeah, I'm not certain I said that. I think it's more and I think you're getting to the leadership part I was referring to. And what I meant there by the leadership perspective is, while I don't think we should collaborate to the point where we're being illegal or violating antitrust acts, we should collaborate to the point, for example, on our measurement. We should come to agreement as one industry on what our best measurement is. Now, right now it's GeoPath. Yet we have groups coming up with their own homebrewed, I kind of like that word, measurement system. And why? Because it's, like Chris Fry, it's an enhancement and it makes us better and different. Not so certain that that's the case. And the issue becomes it kind of darkens the the value of the geopath measurement. Then we got other groups that are coming up and really working against the geopath measurement as well. So we need to come together as a complete group and embrace geopath if we want to make enhancements, as a couple of the big three are doing right now with their separate measurement systems they're coming up with. Do them within the structure of the organization. Do them within what we've already got established, so it raises all boats and everybody benefits. You know, that's collaboration. And we've heard collaboration ad nauseum for a couple of years now, when there's really been none. We're fighting against each other. So,
okay. So lack of collaboration, the idea of selling measurement as an enhancement versus it being something that's embraced across the industry as a uniform method of measurement. Those are two of the things you brought up. But I think that there's a lot of weight on the shoulders of the folks at Geopath to solve this. I mean, they're a pretty small organization, and I think that they've been making some pretty big strides over the course of the last couple of years. I mean, speaking from our own experience, we had to build our own impressions measurement methodology because nothing existed when we launched. So if we wanted it, we had to build it. Now, does that mean that we sold it as an enhancement? No. Before Rapify, selling ads on vehicles was a novelty, and it was not a scalable or measurable thing. We set out to change that. I think so the second part of this is ease of buying. And so, making out of home easier to buy. And there are a bunch of really cool platforms that have emerged. Some of them are homegrown for the individual, out of home operator, and that kind of occupy that big three. And then there's also some smaller ones, like AdQuick, for example, doing some pretty interesting things, making out of home easier to buy and scale and measure. But I'm curious, if you were able to wave a magic wand, what would be your solve for making it easier to buy, or is that too?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that difficult. Yeah, James, I don't think it's that difficult to buy compared to any other media. You mentioned earlier about we have our own separate language and everything. So does broadcast. So does TV. I mean, they're completely different language than what we do in many cases. So I'm not certain that I'm fully on board with us being too difficult to buy. Yes, as I said, I've heard for 40 years that we sometimes, it is tough to buy. But as anything, you got to learn the nomenclature. You got to learn the language. You have to learn the right ways. It shouldn't be, but it is. Just because something's easy doesn't mean it's the right way. And I think we're pretty, as an industry, well, I don't know if there's an industry. I think there's a lot of people who want to gain entrance to the industry who are changing the narrative from the perspective like, this should be easy, shouldn't it? Well, yeah, of course it should be. But is that necessary? Is that what's holding us back? No. I mean, if programmatic was the answer solution, why aren't we sold out right now?
Well, I think the answer to the why aren't we sold out right now is most of out of home is still static, and programmatic for static is not where it needs to be to do that. I think that's one. But
even digital's not sold out, even way nowhere near.
But there's been a massive growth in digital. There's been massive growth in digital because, and a big part of that is because it's easy to buy and easy to turn on.
Agreed. But if I have one of something, and I add one more, I just did what, 100% increase? So percentages, I always hear about that, but that's, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and that's the reporting that we let out, because this kind of ties in with something else that I think we get our own way.
Okay.
And that's we've been satisfied. Some of us have been, some of us have not been, with 4% increases for how many years? Celebrating a 4% increase.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically
what's that?
I was gonna say that's basically the national average, right? I mean, basically the national the national average.
No, that's not true. When you look at online advertising, we look at online digital, their growth is much more than 4%, James.
Oh, totally. What I'm getting at is it's the 4% growth year over year is like population driven, not the channel. Now, Brent, I think looks like you might be frozen. Can you hear me?
If that were the case, you would say product that's out there, then yeah, I can. Yeah, we just looks like we had a little blur. I would think that if you had any, from that perspective, that any product would be, well, subject to the average and subject to the population. So I don't think that's a fair assessment there. The reality is that we need to set our sight higher. I mean, I lived in the days and worked in the days and sold in the days, James, where we're doing 10 and 12% increases. And the population didn't change, and everything percentages are still the same than where they are now from the perspective of what the economy and what the world was like. The reality is that we made some inroads in the industry and changed some of the ways we do things. And
Okay.
We're not being flexible enough to do some of those things now.
So one of the things that came up in I'm part of the OAAA Innovations Committee, and we're talking about how to make all ships rise as we make out of home easier to measure and drive the value prop of out of home. But I think one of the things that came up in that conversation I thought was interesting to note here is there's a heavy reliance on the specialty out of home shops, the buying shops that transact a big portion of the out of home spend that occurs in the US. And one of the things that came up was we need to evangelize the medium as an industry more.
And marketing and sales, James?
Yeah.
There we go.
So I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that the out of home industry in general has to maybe band together a little bit more to amplify the value of out of home, because it's that the responsibility is on the shoulders of largely of a lot of these specialty out of home shops?
Yeah, I think we should, band together, as you say. I think maybe again some different leadership in terms of how we go about marketing. What was the last big marketing campaign Outdoor did that you can remember and said, "Oh my God, it totally knocked my socks off"?
Well, I mean, the most recent one was
the one that knocked your socks off. Now, I don't want you to name one that's like, "Oh my God, this just floored me," and everybody I know talked about it. What a great program!
I really like this ad is real. I really enjoyed that campaign. I thought that it was one that a lot of people did see. But I mean, to your point, no, there hasn't been one prolific out of home campaign that comes to mind that solidified the medium.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I mean, so there are probably 400,000 signs easily that are open right now in America.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of signs.
Yeah, do you think that's that many, or think there's more or less?
More than 400,000?
Yeah, open, available, unsold.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know,
Okay.
actually.
I would suggest there's easily over 400,000 faces that are open right now. I'm counting every vehicle with Rapify, every vehicle for other cars that other people wrap cars. I'm counting truck size. I'm counting place-based gas station pumps like GSTV. I'm counting health areas, gyms, which, I don't know if anybody's going to gyms right now, but, counting all that. And plus the traditional out of home, which, I know some people don't like the word traditional, but that's what it is. And bus size, everybody will say there's easy 400,000. How about a campaign for utilizing 400,000 faces, getting everybody on board? The message has got to be right, the content's got to be right, and that's the challenge, and that's always been the challenge. And I think the opportunity to build that out and create that has to be done internally. I don't think we need to go to one of the big 6 agencies to do it for us, and come up with something. There's a ton of people out there that are very good at what they do in creating out of home. Now, there's only a handful of really great ones, but there's still a lot of good people out there that create strong out of home. Come up with a campaign. We've got a few suggestions we talked about in our little podcast on OOH today. And come up with a campaign that's going to utilize 400,000 faces for a 30-day campaign that's so damn good and so damn memorable, James, that you're going to see Lester Holt talk about on NBC. And he would if it's good. And you're going to hear it on, Nightline, CNN, Fox Television, Fox News. That's the kind of thing we need to do and get behind as an industry, everyone, and not have it be, it's got to be Clear Channel's creative or Outfront's creative, but it's got to be our creative that comes out of the industry. If the best one comes out of Clear Channel, we'll use this. So I think that's one thing we can do.
That's one. I mean, that's one action plan for. I think that it could make a lot of sense when if we were to time it with the announcement of a vaccine.
Yeah. Or presidential election. Jeez, how about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's that is interesting. I mean, you know, we do have we do have organizations that do support national and international causes that the out-of-home industry supports. We've done stuff. We did something recently for the NAACP. There's been a bunch of Black Lives Matter
commendable
pushed out.
Commendable, good stuff. But tell me the tagline for the hashtag line for the World Out-of-Home Organizations campaign. That's the largest digital campaign in the world that's going on right now. Hashtag, give me that, what that is. It's the largest one ever been done.
This ad is real?
Nope.
Campaign?
It's up right now all over the world. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not putting on the spot. Don't worry. If I ask 9 out of 10 out-of-home people that question, I would venture to say, ask 10 people, I'd venture to say 7 or 8 would have not had the answer. It's called Our Second Chance.
Okay.
Second Chance campaign?
You broke up, sorry.
Are you familiar with the Our Second Chance campaign?
I'm not, no.
I'm not trying to put you on, look, nobody, my point is, I don't think very many people are. But yet that was touted, it is touted today as the largest single out-of-home campaign in the world. Why is it missing? Why don't you know it? Frankly, because the creative misses. Don't want it that way, wish it wasn't. Lamar's got it on the street, Clear Channel's on the street, everybody's got it. It's all over the world. It came out of London, came out of the UK with the World Out-of-Home Organization. So content's important. So that's one, you're right, that's just one thing. But so get a good marketing. The other thing, I think we need a national sales organization, agnostic national sales organization.
Okay.
Present the industry, and they're not pushing any single out-of-home company or any single agency. Now, something I've talked about for years, I've thought it completely through. We're not gonna have time on this event to go over each step by step, but it's something I've pretty well solved all the answers to. And I don't care if I run or who runs it, but we need agnostic sales.
Okay.
No one's really out there selling absolutely new business national sales. Now, I've had this discussion before, and you tell me you are. And that's great. But I suspect most people aren't. In fact, I more than suspect, I know they're not. This is what I do. This is part of what my job as publisher for OH Today, as I talk to people every day all over the country. And I promise them anonymity, promise confidentiality. And I ask them, where is this at? What's going on? What are you guys doing here? And it's from the big 3 to the big 6 to the little guys. So I think that's another issue that we need to do. We need to change. There used to be an agnostic national sales organization.
Okay.
The USA Today Network. What was it? It was Gannett, Outdoor Network. I think it was called the USA Network. We're at home. Great organization.
So I think that a lot of that is, I think the tactical nature of a really widely scaled unified message could be really, really interesting. And I would support doing that. Rapify would absolutely support doing that.
Yeah, I figured you would.
But I don't look at it as a silver bullet. I look at it as, okay, well, that's a good step forward.
Right.
I disagree with you on the ease of buying, just because I was tasked to buy lots of media before, and out of home wasn't the easiest to buy. And the ease of measurement and uniform measurement, I think, also is a part of that. I think so. Like, going back to, we talked about, you mentioned the big 3, but there's like this number 4 that we don't really talk about, and that's all of the independents combined.
Yeah.
If there was an open exchange or some way of being able to transact across all independents, that could remove a lot of friction, because then that would require all of them to be, on a platform selling their media that way. What's to stop Google from coming in and just establishing, here's the standards, here's how to transact, here's the framework for doing it. If you're an independent and want Google support, sign up. I'm curious, like, why hasn't that, I feel like that could totally not only transform, but completely disrupt the out-of-home space.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think you're right on point. First of all, let me just make a clarification. I think we might be in agreement on. You said, you talked about silver bullet, and I should have prefaced all my statements. There is no silver bullet. There is no holy grail. And I think that's something that the programmatic guys are looking at, or the measurement and data guys looking at, like, oh, we've got it here. Here's the holy grail. And this will change it. Those aren't going to change. In fact, they're a long ways from it. I think the holy grail is, if there is such a thing, is going to be created for our industry. But let's talk about what you said about Google or Facebook into the business. And if you listen to some of our podcasts, Jack Sullivan, who's one of our board members, has made it very clear that that would change the whole dynamics of the industry. We would welcome it because it would be disruptive. It would also, change the way it's sold. And I think many people on the programmatic side, well, yes, of course, Eureka, that means it's all going to be programmatic. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But it will change the way it's going, the way we sell today. And I think there needs to be some.
Sure. And one of the things, like, I really want to touch on there is, programmatic doesn't necessarily mean that it's limited to a digital display. And I think that there's a misnomer there. A lot of folks think that programmatic is only digital displays, and I think that once the industry can get on board with the fact that static needs that type of firepower and the ability to control getting a widely scaled multi-market national buy across not just the digital displays but also the static stuff, I think that we'll see a bigger advancement in programmatic ad spending propelling the industry. And that doesn't mean that each individual operator can't have their sales force selling their inventory. I mean, they should, but the reality is none of them are sold out 100% or 50% or even 20% in some cases. So I think what I'd like to, we're coming up on time, and we've got a few folks that have submitted some questions in the comment on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions for the folks that tuned in, go ahead and hit send and we'll try to get to them. We've got a couple more minutes.
How many people are on listening to us, watching us?
Right now, it looks like we've got a handful on LinkedIn, and I'm looking at my little streaming report. Probably about 100 live across all channels.
Cool.
One of the questions that came through was, what can sellers do to empower and enable agencies to sell through the out-of-home to the planners and the strategy team? So basically, how can we sell upward on not just the vanity of out-of-home? Because, by the way, like, out-of-home is a very impactful thing. I've never shared a screenshot of a digital ad on, well, actually, that's not true. I have, but it's very few and far between. It's very rare that I screenshot a banner and share it with anybody. But celebrating or sharing a really impactful out-of-home ad, marketers love doing it. It's not just because it costs a lot of money or it was hard to buy. It's because it creates a different type of impact. And when you marry that impact with measurement, the brands that really get it, and by the way, if you look at some of the most successful IPOs of the last 12, 24 months, some of the highest performing stocks, biggest venture raised. I mean, if you look at some of the venture funds raised for some of the brands that really embrace out-of-home, there's a direct correlation. And it's not just them spending venture dollars on pumping up their brand. It works. It works.
Yeah, it works.
It absolutely works.
There's probably a little bit of that pumping up the brand, but that's okay. Because at the end of the day, it does have to work. And if it doesn't work, they're not going to continue. And as we've seen, as you pointed out, they are continuing. They're not just one and done buyers. They're long-term buyers. They've been buying year over year over year. So nothing wrong with going in and doing a little pump up. That's cool. Are they coming back? Is it succeeding? That's important. But I think to answer the person's question that what we can do, I think the answer goes in the question, and that is this. Milton Glaser comment, by the way, the answer is in the question. Milton just passed away, by the way. The answer to the question is this. Who said you can't go up and sell? People put their own walls in front. So this comes, I think we have real sales issues. Know that people fully understand the sales process. There's no reason you need to go. You don't need permission from the buyers and the planners. It'd be nice to have it. Go direct up. And this comes back to the agnostic national sales team I was talking about. And the point being is that if they're out selling this national sales team, they're going to clients direct. That is their total, not their total, that's their primary focus, is going direct. And they're going to brands that don't use this now, or they're going to brands that use this but underuse this and should be spending more money. And there's a lot of them out there. So you don't, I mean, for the person to ask a question, you don't need that permission. You don't need someone to make it slick for you and grease for you. Here you go on up and do it. No, it's going to be tough. There's no easy button. I'm not trying to sound like a patronizing SOB, but just knock the doors down, go around, dig under, go over the top, finesse it, give gifts, whatever you need to do. Just get in there yourself and don't wait for someone to say, oh, James, you want to go and talk to the people above me? No, it's not going to work that way. They'll never give that away.
Sure. Well, I think, one way to do that, because, navigating the brand direct and agency relationship is delicate sometimes. And I think that there is a way to do it tactfully without ruffling too many feathers. I think one of the things is going back to your unified, getting people to understand how to sell it. I think one of the things we've learned, and this is like firsthand experience, is you're going to know how to articulate the value prop of your specific out-of-home product better than a specialty shop, no matter how smart, no matter how sharp they are, no matter how well versed they are. And I think that it's on the out-of-home operators' shoulders to educate and use marketing as a channel to educate brands on the medium. So that doesn't mean when you got an RFP, you got to pick up the phone and call that brand up direct and try to sell them. You need to make sure that the brand understands what you do and what you are, so that when they do have to approve the plan, they're not going, what is this? I know, take that off the plan. I don't know, they just buy just the billboards. We want the billboards, or how does play space fit into this? Like, if they don't understand each one of those different line items when it shows up on the grid, then you lose. And so I think what we could do as an industry is maybe create some guidelines for how we can educate brands about the medium, and not just about, our inventory, but about the medium, how it works in a multi-touch attribution model, how it works when it's layered in with other media channels.
We couldn't agree more.
Specifically, how out-of-home affects a digital conversion, or how out-of-home affects the performance of your digital budget. I mean, I think that's something as an industry I don't think we talk about enough. I mean, ironically, and I shared something that was shared last year by Facebook. They did an EMEA or European study on how out-of-home made the Facebook ad spend perform 13% higher. And and there've been so many different reports from a bunch of different groups that mirror that sentiment. And that's because it's something that continues to work. So being able to come together and talk about, okay, direct attribution and your direct response is part of your plan, but how does building brand and using other media channels affect the stuff that you spend money on DR? Because it's DR by itself isn't an end all be all. Out of home by itself isn't an end all be all. Direct response.
Okay, I didn't get the initials. Okay, DR, got you. I think you're onto it there. I think that what you're saying, we have done a little bit. We have done over the years. It's just there's just so much confusion in the marketplace right now with so many people with their own agendas. And it doesn't help that there's a number of people out there that are really not outdoor people, and they're going in there and they're putting on this, hey, I'm the new outdoor answer, I'm the outdoor expert. And they've only been doing it maybe 6 months, but they write letters to their significant other, their girlfriend or boyfriend say, I love outdoor, and so that makes me an expert. That doesn't make you an expert. And I think that causes a great deal of confusion in the marketplace. You know, getting back to what you're saying about going in with, you know, I'm not sure what to label it, but appropriate messages that we can all agree upon somewhat. Yes, that's important, but I also think that that's where the creativity of, I mean, salespeople are creative people. So we allow them to go in with their own pitch, if you will. But the point is, we have to do it, and we don't need permission to do it. So what are those other questions? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And then, by the way, I agree with that. You know, I don't, asking for permission is not really something I'm that good at.
You've never done that in your life. I don't know your mom, but I'm sure she would say that.
So one of the other questions that came through, and we're going to wrap it up with this one. And this is actually a really great question, but you know, I'm a digitally native marketer. I didn't come with any sort of traditional marketing background.
Understood.
I was born in the internet marketing age, and when internet marketing was like its own category, and now it's just marketing, because anything that touches the internet is marketing. So it's kind of it's just marketing now. But to the digitally native marketer like me, how do you get them to understand the value prop of out of home, and how do you get the digitally native marketer fired up about out of home so that they actually do layer it into plans? Because I'll tell you this, I've been on calls with folks that control massive budgets at brands that have lots of money to spend across a bunch of channels, and it's almost like there's this blind spot where they just can't see, if there's no last click attribution, they can't see it. It's just not something that makes sense to them.
Right.
And so I think it requires, not only does it require education, but I think it also requires a different way of communicating to the digitally native marketer. And I'm curious, you know, is there something that you've seen that the out-of-home industry can adopt or adapt to make it easier for the digitally native marketer to transact out of home?
You know, that's a good question. I can't tell you that I have. I mean, I'm sure there's solutions there. I mean, you caught me with one I'm not really prepared for. You know, the shininess is going to come off of that nickel on digital a little bit. And we see it happen a little bit. So it's coming off of it. I don't, you know, I mean, look, obviously you have a ton of money that's going into digital with millions of dollars. And even though you hear the guy from P&G every now and then say, we're going to cut back, or Unilever, we're going to cut back and not spend, they end up spending anyways. You know, what happened to the Facebook boycott? Hear anything about that? Know anything about that right now, James? Yeah, exactly. It ain't happening. They're not going to go.
Well, that was, I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I mean, that was a PR stunt to me.
Of course it was. But it was or not, they're, you know, it's short-lived and they're gone. They're back together again. You know, I mean, it's like, it's a narcotic that people have trouble staying away. It's quick, it's fast. Is it effective? Sure, arguably it is. But you know, I look at the old cartoon where you got these 4 boxes, these cartoon boxes, and you got the guy seeing the ad for Nike on TV, then he hears on the radio in his car, and then he's driving down the road and sees the billboard. He gets in front of the computer and he sees it on the computer, says, "Oh my God, I'll hit it." And it comes back to the Nike people. "Oh my God, digital works. We're going to spend more money in digital." When in fact, it's all the other channels, you know, whether it's broadcast, print, or out of home. So, you know, that's a difficult one. That's where a little measurement certainly is going to come into play. Some data is going to come into play, but those two things in themselves are not the holy grails. And those two things, in silver bullet, as you say, those two things themselves, even separately, are going to take us to that next level. They'll be part of it, and maybe an important part of it. But at the end of the day, as Bob Wolf, who's also in our Without Signs, said many times, somebody still has to sell the product. Somebody still has to sell the industry, as you said. Somebody still has to sell. We have to get in there and talk about it and get them to like it, get them to like us. And part of that is getting to like the way it's bought, allegedly easier with programmatic, allegedly, you know, better with the right data and measurement. Agreed, all those things are important, but it still has to be sold. There still has to be a want for it. So maybe going back to your question, this ties in. How do we get them to want out of home like they want digital? Maybe that's a way of rephrasing the question you just asked me. How do we get people to say, "Oh, I really want out of home," and get them to want it and love us and have it as much as they want digital? That's a good question. I think, again, and there's multiple answers. Our marketing needs a lot of work as a national, as a world group, needs a lot of work.
Sure. I mean,
Collaborate and be together in that. Our sales needs a lot of work where we're working together. Our data's got measurements, got to come together. It can't be separate. And I put this all back in the financial guys who are counting, you know, beans, or counting how many times somebody gets on their email every day. You know, James, did you make your 23 email calls today? Did you make your 42 phone calls? And rating that. But James, you've got your budget made for the year. Yeah, but your numbers are down as far as how many calls and stuff. We've got to get away from those kinds of quantitative measurements of our success and go to, you know, which is important. We still have to have dollars, but let's look at some qualitative measurements too, to gauge our success, and not so much gauge our success, but what we need to do to be successful. A fine line there, but it's something that should be differentiated.
Brent, I really appreciate your time. You know, I've been trying to get a bunch of different voices onto these LinkedIn live sessions. We've had folks like President Adage, Josh Golden. We've had Anna Baer. We've had some really high profile CMOs. We've had veterans of the out of home industry. You know, our next LinkedIn live session is going to be with Ian Dalmore at Lamar, and we're going to talk about the future of programmatic. So for those of you that are watching this live, definitely make sure to tune into that. If you're watching the recording, hopefully you're watching this before that live session, because it's going to be awesome, and we're going to try to do what we can to make it as collaborative as possible, because programmatic is a big part of the future out of home, and I'm really excited about it. Brent, thank you so much for the time, and we're going to end the live stream here. I'm going to give it about a 20-second pause so that we don't cut anything off. So just bye here.